Good morning and welcome to this new lecture. Today we're going to talk about the third declension, which is a kind of a difficult topic. So let us see some of the features of the third declension. So the third declension is the one with the highest number of nouns, and it includes masculine, feminine, and neuter nouns. One hard thing is that for the third declension you will need to learn a new set of endings, which, as we will see, have also many variations. There is one for the masculine and the feminine, and one for the neuter nouns. Another tricky part is that the nominative has no fixed ending, but it's variable. Therefore, the starting point to look for the nominative, to identify the stem and then to attach all the endings is the genitive singular. So when you find the noun of the third declension, you should always start by identifying what the genitive singular is. And why the genitive singular? Because the genitive singular is the only fixed form of the third declension, since for every noun it always ends in is. So we divide two types of nouns of the third declension: the regular nouns and the I-stem nouns, and they all have a different set of endings. Let us see them. So for the regular nouns we have one set of endings for the masculine and the feminine and one for the neuter. As you can see, the nominative is variable and it always coincides with the vocative, so there is no problem of distinguishing them like in the second declension. The genitive is in is, the dative in I, the accusative in am, and the ablative in e. As for the plural, we have es, ibus, es, ibus. For the neuter, I would say that what changes is that nominative, vocative, and accusative share the same forms, but they are different from the singular and the plural. So the nominative is variable. Then we have is and I for genitive and dative. The accusative is equal to the nominative because, as we have studied, nominative, vocative, and accusative in neuter nouns are the same, and the ablative is in e. For the plural, we have the a ending for nominative, vocative, and accusative, which we have seen even for the second declension nouns. Then we have genitive plural in and dative and ablative are in ibus, which is usually the ending which is the easiest to recognize. Let's take an example. So you will recognize the so-called regular nouns because they have a different number of syllables from the nominative to the genitive. For example, if we take consul, consulis, we will see that the nominative consul has 2 syllables, while the genitive consulis has 3 syllables. So this is one of the distinguishing features of the regular nouns. So in this example, I decline a masculine noun, consul consulis, and the neuter noun, corpus corporis, which mean, respectively, the consul and the body. So I will read the forms of consul. Consul, consulis, consuli, consulem, consule. Consules, consulum, consulibus, consulas, consulibus. Let us read the forms of corpus. Corpus, corporis, corpori, corpus, corpore. Corpora, corporum, corporibus, corpora, corporibus. As we can see, we find all the endings that we have explained in the previous slide. Some noticeable features are that, as we said before, the genitive always ends in is. We have an accusative with an am ending. The genitive plural is and this can be tricky because sometimes it can be confused with an accusative of the second declension. A very recognizable ending is the ibus, which is typical both of the dative and the accusative plural and the ablative plural. As for the neuter, we can see that the nominative, the vocative, and the accusative are the same. In the plural, they share the ending a, which is typical even for second declension nouns, and dative and ablative plural have this very recognizable ending ibus. After the regular nouns, we have the I-stem nouns. So I-stem nouns are nouns in which an I appears in some forms of the declension. And these forms are the genitive plural that ends in ium, and the nominative, vocative, and accusative neuter, plural, which have the ending in ia. Let us see some examples. So generally, the I-stem nouns are recognizable because nominative and genitive have the same number of syllables. And the example that I chose is urbs, urbis. As you can see, both nominative and genitive have the same number of syllables. So urbs, urbis. So they both have 2 syllables. And so they are likely to be I-stem nouns. So there are exceptions, of course, but this is the general rule. I will read the forms of urbs. Urbs, urbis, urbi, urbem, urbe. Urbes, urbium, urbibus, urbes, urbibus. As you can see, for the masculine and feminine nouns, I-stem, the only difference is the genitive plural, because it ends in ium rather than for the regular nouns. Something different can be found with the neuter nouns. So there are not many I-stem neuter nouns. You recognize them because they generally end in e, like mare, maris, the sea, al, like animal, animalis, which is the name that I chose as an example, and ar, for example, pulvinar, pulvinaris, which is the pillow. Let us decline animal and let's see the differences or the particular features. So I will read the forms. Animal, animalis, animali, animal, animali. Animalia, animalium, animalibus, animalia, animalibus. So, as we can see, the I of the I-stem appears in some forms of the declension. It appears in the ablative singular, which does not end in e, but ends in i, so you have animali, and it appears in the nominative, vocative, and accusative of the plural. Then you have animalia, and also the genitive plural. You have animalium. So the book will tell you that the nominative, you have to learn the nominative by heart when you find the third declension noun. Well, that is really not true. So there are some strategies that will help you find the nominative of a third declension noun. I don't think you should study them, but you should take this slide in front of you and try to see whether this slide can actually help you. So you should take it as a reference, not study it by heart, because as you can see there are many cases. And this also does not contemplate all the cases, because the nominative of the third declension has a high degree of variability. So there are also cases in which this table is not useful enough. So you should just take it as a reference. So the last thing that I wanted to view today is a particular noun of the third declension, which is the noun vis, which means force or strength. Vis is a noun with some particular features. First of all, it has a defective declension. So what does defective mean? This means that it lacks some forms, that is to say, the genitive and the dative singular. So the book will tell you that these forms don't exist, which is true, but they can be supplied from another word. And this word is roburis, the oak. The oak, of course, is a very robust and big tree. So, for the Romans, it conveys the idea of strength. So, the noun vis misses some forms, but they can be integrated by taking the forms of another noun. The other particular feature is that in the singular, vis means force or power or violence, while in the plural it means strength. Well, this is common for some nouns, as we have seen, for example, copia, copie, which in the singular means abundance and in the plural means troops, and also for auxilium, auxilia. Auxilium in the singular is help and in the plural is auxiliary troops. So another case is with vis, which can mean force in the singular or strength in the plural. In some cases, depending on the context, it can also mean military force or military troops. For example, if you're translating a passage in which there is a battle by Caesar and the noun vis appears, well, it is likely to mean like military force, military troops. So let us see the declension. I will read the forms of vis. Vis, roboris, robori, vim, vi. Vires, virium, viribus, vires, viribus. As you can see, this noun of course is particular because it's defective, but if we analyze the endings, we can see that they are not much different from the regular endings of the third declension. Something that changes, for example, can be the accusative singular, which does not end in m, but in im. But as for the rest, I would say that the forms are the same. The plural as an I stem, genitive plural. So it would not be virum, but virium. A tricky thing of vis is that one should be careful and not confuse vis, which is a third declension noun, with vir viri, the man, which is a second declension noun. And this is a very common mistake among students, and because it is easy to be tricked. They are very similar, but they belong to different declensions, so they should not be confused. Okay, this is all I had to say for this lecture. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in class.